Hello. How's everybody doing? Great. So first of all, thank you, Emmanuel and Pierre Simon and Florian, and most importantly, thank you, students, for inviting me to come talk with you. I always say yes anytime a student organization asks me to speak, because I get very excited to be around youth, because I know what my generation of entrepreneurs has created, and I get really excited to be around the people who are going to make us look like silly. Right? You guys are going to be the next creators, and you're going to really do some amazing things. So it's very exciting to be a part of the room, be a part of the ecosystem. Just a show of hands here real quickly. How many of you are coders? Woo! For the coders. Nice. And how many of you think of yourself as entrepreneurs or founders? That's great. How many of you have a WordPress blog? Oh, come on, more. For those of you who do, thank you on the board of WordPress. And how many of you have an About.me page? That's great. For the record, more than WordPress. Make sure we tell Matt. So what I want to talk about here is not so much about.me, although I'm going to use about.me as a narrative. I want to talk about thinking a little bit differently when you're launching your product. Because all of you are going to launch products. Hopefully you're going to launch multiple things, either in the context of a startup, a big company, or your own startup. And I think it's important when you get to that moment to take a step back and not just do what everybody else does. Sometimes what everybody else does is a great signal for things that you need to do, right? It's what I call the table stakes, the basic things that you have to go do. Lean, mean, startup methodologies, conversion marketing. Where I think the magic lies, though, is when you take a step back and you think about other things that you might do that make sense, right? And the market's telling you to do. So Robin knows who this is, so I'll exclude him. But besides knowing Ricky, does anybody actually know who Branch Rickey is? That's good. All right. Branch Rickey is an amazing human being. So he did a couple things that really created modern league baseball in the United States as we know it today, which is a very big sport. So the first thing that he did was he signed Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson was the American to play in the professional leagues. And that's historic, right? And a lot of people say, whoa, he's really brave. He really did something amazing. It's amazing what he did, and I don't want to poo-pah his accomplishments, because it took somebody to be the catalyst, somebody to be brave. But in reality, he was just observing what was happening. He just stood already that the general public was saying, have the best athletes be a part of the teams. No matter what race or gender they are, have the best athletes be a part of a team. And so he capitalized on that. And by doing so, he created a lot of luck for himself, right? Because he created a larger pool of people, of athletes, that he could include on his teams. And he went on to win major league championships and did really well. The second thing that Branch Rickey did to create his own luck was he started what we call the American Farm Leagues. So you have the professional league, which everybody wants to get to, but you have all these leagues that to it. And before Branch Rickey, that didn't exist. So once again, he expanded his pool of talent that he could recruit from. That was really smart, right? So he created his own luck. So what I want to talk about is some basic things that I've used in starting my companies, some things that we use and we talk to our founders. What are you doing? So the first thing, as I learned, is name for desire. So I talk about, to me, when I'm going to start a business, the most important thing for me to go forward is if I can get the right URL. I know that's silly, but it's a core belief I have. If I can't get a good URL, I won't start the business. So when I started About.me, I decided it was going to be called About.me. Everybody told me, you can get that URL. But I went and I figured out how to get the URL, right? I started talking to the government of Montenegro. That's where the domain.me is. I did numerous calls, I think 14 calls, I explained to them, throwing your chips, I explained to them who was going to be involved in the project. And essentially, we created our own luck, right? And we got the URL. And that's one of the key tenets to our success on About.me. It was one of the key tenets of our success on WordPress. It's one of the key tenets of our success on Sphere. The second thing that we did, which nobody had done at the time, so the conventional wisdom was start a company, get some advisors, get some investors, normally 4 or 5 people maybe involved, and kind of go. And I took a step back and I thought, why 5? Why 3? Why not 100? Why not a whole community? So when we started About.me, we had 26 advisors for 4 people. That's 6.5 advisors for each one of us. It's pretty good, huh? Right? Kind of crazy. Everybody's like, what are you doing, dude? It's like, I don't know. It just makes sense, right? These are people that I'm excited to have involved in my project. This is karma. These are people that I like. These are people I hang out with. They're people I respect. And most importantly, they're people that understood our product and could help us to create awareness and generate massive, massive early adoption. Getting people like Kevin Rose or Veronica Belmont or Om Malik or Matt Mullenweg or Dick Costello, CEO of Twitter. These are great people to get involved in your project, right? You're not going to be able to get, most likely, you know, Kevin Rose. But you're somebody. Maybe you can get Jeff Clavier. Maybe you can get me. Maybe you can get somebody else, right, that you come across. And you should always think about, this is somebody I want to have a long-term relationship with. When I met these people, I was creating my luck, right? I didn't have an idea of how I was going to work with them, but I knew to take a long-term approach. It's what Jeff was talking about. You know, don't come up and try to hit lightning. Meet Jeff. Meet him this year. Meet him next year. Keep in touch with them. Send him information. You'll create your own luck eventually. This was great for us. We had over 18 million Twitter followers. So think about that. 18 million. That's a number. It's like, is that a big number? Is it a small number? It's a massive number. There's no newspaper in the world that reaches more than 2 million. It's a big number. The next thing that we understood exclusivity. This is the oldest trick in the book, right? And this worked really well for us. So when we were starting the company, some people wanted to write about it, namely Mike Arrington from TechCrunch, Robin's old publication. And I told Mike, I said, no, please don't. Because if you do, it's just going to create a lot of pressure, and we're not ready, and whatnot. But then Mike called me and he said, dude, you're not thinking about this correctly. You have an opportunity to create, you know, a waiting list, right? Because your product is called About.me. People want their name. It's not called Google or Twitter or some kind of made-up name. It's a very literal name, and people are going to want to reserve their name. So let me go ahead and announce what you're doing, and let's create a sign-up list, right? So when you launch on TechCrunch, conventional wisdom is that you get 3,000 to 5,000 people sign up for your service. Anybody want to guess how many people we had sign up on the wait list? You know. Anybody? Anybody? One wild guess. Come on, somebody be brave. You. No. We had over almost 200,000 people. That's big. It's crazy, right? Exclusivity as an incentive. These are just people that want to be a part of it. I don't know what I've done with the clicker. But that's an amazing concept. This is a photograph from Studio 54, which was one of the first clubs in New York. And that is a group of people waiting to get in. This is the article that Mike wrote. The next thing that we did was we live in a world where we talk about scale, massive digital scale. And I think we forget some common sense here. There's a lot of common sense in things that don't scale by nature. So, you know, one of the things we did was what we call physical to digital. We did business cards. Okay? Just physical business cards. No startup does business cards. For us, it made sense, right? And what happens is we now have over 200,000 people who have gotten their About.me cards. We give 50 free when you sign up for the service. We just give them to you. They're beautiful cards. They take the background of your page and they put it on the card, and they put some information that you can customize. And we now have over, 10 million of these cards in circulation. Think about that, right? It's just a couple 100,000 people. Each person gets 50 cards. It makes a lot of cards that you can give out. So once again, it's leveraging physical to digital. It's a big trend that we think is super important. Startups never think to do advertising, right? Costs too much money, it's not possible. Guess what? We ran ads in every taxi cab in New York, Boston, San Francisco, Los Angeles. We did it for under $50,000. It's crazy. We had every single taxi for a full week running About.me ads. The better thing that we did there, though, that you missed, is that we included those early advisors, right? So Kevin Rose and Dick and Veronica, and we would include them in the loop. Guess what they do? It's even Kevin Rose is like, wow, I'm in an ad? That's cool, right? So like he went to New York, I think he took a picture of it, and he tweets it, right? So once again, people, with the business cards, people get their business cards, they take pictures of them, they tweet it, that creates scale, right? It's not just the physical, but it's giving people an excuse to talk and engage with your product. Super, super important. Taking your community and involving them in your product, using them, right, or partnering with them to create promotion for your product is a very important concept. You have to do it. It's block and tackling, and it's really hard, but it's really fun when you do it right. We did billboards, one of the last things I'm going to talk about here, where we took our users, this is that girl, this is her right there, on the billboard, and we put them up and down the highways. Not expensive. I mean, it's a little expensive, but not that expensive. But the promotion that we got and the uniqueness of doing that, no startup does that, right? So just by doing that, we caught everybody's attention. Secondly, using our advisors in these billboards, guess what they did? They got in their car, they drove. Sometimes if they had a family, they took their family out and they took a photo. It's like, hey, that's me. And, they tweet it. It's really amazing. Who doesn't want to be on a billboard? Somebody always raises their hands. You're a liar. Everybody wants to be on a billboard. I was on a billboard in New York, on a huge one in Soho. It's one that Michael Jordan and LeBron James were on right before me. I'm there. That's cool. Get my autograph after. We did a Times Square thing. This is more digital. Times Square cost $20,000 for us to take over the largest billboard in Times Square for one day. $20,000. It's nothing. I mean, it's something, but it's once you get going, it's not, if you're funded and you got $1 million in the bank or whatever, that's not a big deal, right? Veronica Belmont has almost 2 million Twitter followers. She's the co-host of Techzilla, right? Look what she's written. I don't pander for things much, but I'd love some votes to put my About.me page in Times Square. She's tweeting this multiple times a day, and you see it, people see it, they may not know about.me, and they're like, hey, I'm going to vote for her, but I'm also going to set up a page, right? Great customer acquisition. Once again, leveraging physical for digital, for scale.
This is Veronica. Veronica works, hangs out, helps out, eats and drinks. She's also got a bad video game habit. Veronica lives online, like most of us, and she meets tons of people from different spheres of life.
You get the idea. So we leverage Veronica. She's on our welcome screen. When you come to sign in for the service, she's there. People know her. It's exciting. We put all kinds of famous people in our characters, cartoon characters of them. And once again, they like that. They tweet it, and it makes them a deeper partner for us. So that's it. I have a lot more stuff I could talk to you about product market fit. I'm happy to talk to you guys about venture capital, some of the investments I've done, theories on that. Whatever you'd like to talk about, just throw it at me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Does anybody have a question?
There has been a lot of talk about how a lot of products in Silicon Valley are getting more and more trivial and that there are less and less people building so-called important or useful products. What are your thoughts on that?
Wait, say it again, sorry.
There are a lot of discussions and talks about how Silicon Valley, it's getting more, because of the whole celebrity culture around entrepreneur, more and more people are building kind of, you know, they call it trivial products and not useful products. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, sure. No, I think it's super important. I think trivial products, they don't work, right? They don't have a core audience, they don't have a core meaning, they don't serve a purpose. And so you can get a lot of sign up, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's a lot of value. So we've seen a lot of this with Facebook timeline integrations, things like Vidi, Social Cam. I don't know enough about them to say they're not important and that they don't delight users. I suspect they don't, right? I suspect that they were flashes in the pan and they had a meteoric rise, but they go away. So I think you have to be very careful about that. I think we're looking for products that have deep engagement, right? And, you know, or have value. So I'll give you a couple examples where you have to really think twice. WordPress, right? Everybody kind of sets up for a blog. We see this all the time. They have good intentions, especially after Christmas. I'm going to blog in 2013, you know, and they set up their blog, and they blog a little bit, but blogging's hard. After a while, they kind of stop blogging, right? So our challenge in WordPress is how do we make sure that we engage you, the owner of the site, and how do we also make sure that we make it easy for you to keep your site living, right? So to post things to it, right? So reblogging, you know, is a concept that becomes important. Pierre Simon blogs something interesting, and I can just on my mobile phone say reblog it, it adds it to my blog, and it gives him attribution. Those kind of concepts, right, are really super important. But you have to have the audience to be able to do it. On LinkedIn, I talked to Reid Hoffman about this a couple weeks ago. LinkedIn's another classic product where, and I think About.me is a very similar product to this, where you may all sign up, and you may not necessarily log in on a daily basis or a weekly basis, maybe not even on a monthly basis. It doesn't mean the product doesn't create value for you, right? Your LinkedIn page is something that people are seeing. I get about 300 visits per day on my About.me page, right? That's me. That's my profile. That's how I want you to view me. So even if I don't log into that product for months, that product is serving me very well and creating a lot of value for me, right? Now, for us to have a valuable business model, just like LinkedIn or WordPress or any of these things, we need to have a user base which is engaged and comes back, right? So that's a different set of challenges. Does that answer your question? Great.
Other question maybe in the room?
Right here.
How can you make sure a profile is not a fake one? And do you plan having any ID system or stuff like that?
So the first part of your question I heard, but the second part I didn't.
The second part?
Yeah.
Do you plan having any EID system?
So how do you know if it's real? I don't know. I believe in the power of the community to let us know, right? It happens in blogs, happens in Twitter. You know, when people take your name inappropriately, you'll know, right? People will see it and you know. Richard Branson, it's really great. Richard Branson, early on, some profile for Richard Branson, it wasn't him. So his people reached out to us. He now has a profile, right? He has the real Richard Branson profile. So at this scale, where we're sub 10 million users, we can handle this on a kind of a one-off basis. Over time, I think there's concepts for us around verified that'll become more important and also probably link themselves to a business model. Okay.
Hello, Tony. You said the URL was very important for you. And on the other side, about.me is not very well ranked in Google. So I was wondering, is there a link, and why is not about.me is not better ranked on Google?
Well, I don't know about that ranks, right? I'm not so worried about that. That's not how we acquire customers. They don't come to Google, and if they come to Google and they're looking for about.me, they'll find us one way or the other. So I'm not so worried that when people type in the words about me, that we rank number one.
But for example, I have a profile, and then when I type my name, my profile is only like maybe third or fourth page.
Oh, well, that's not good. So on mine, for whatever reason, and we do a lot of SEO optimization for this, and you should send me if that's happening, because that's not normal. We find that, so for instance, before I launched about.me, on the first page of results, I had zero. Zero. Because there's a famous musician named Tony Conrad. It's kind of a bummer with a famous musician. So I launched about.me. Today, if you go, you guys can Google this right now, I think you'll find that either 5 or 6 of the top results are me. And so that's the SEO. So my about.me page ranks really high, but the other things that are ranking high are the pages I'm linking to. So my True Ventures page, my Crunchbase page, my WordPress blog, all those things are now surfacing incredibly high. So that's not been I think for most of our users, the experience is that it shows up pretty high in Google results. Now, one of the problems I'll have sometimes with Google is I think that they'll favor their own profiles and things that they shouldn't do. But we'll leave that for us people.
Hello, Tony. You talked a lot about your product, which is brilliant, and how you brought it to the market. But I'm very interested in hearing about how you found talents to work for you for the project. Because now in France, I don't know about the States. Maybe in the States, the startup culture is a lot more, widespread. But here in France, taking risks isn't very, very, very common. And especially developers here in France is an increasingly rare, scarce resource. And what would you advise young companies and entrepreneurs, especially on early stage, to find talents for building such products?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the talent question. I think your question is a great, but I think I hear this question a lot, and I think it's kind of doesn't make any sense to me, right? Because I think your job as a founder, no matter where you are, right? I can't solve the macroeconomic environment. I can't solve the macro issues around people wanting to take risk, not take risk, right? But I think inherently, if somebody is sitting down with you and having a conversation, they want to take risk. They want you to help them take the risk. It's your job as a founder to put that person in a position where they can make the decision that they want to make, right? It's really, as a founder, I take that so seriously, right? So for me, it's not a question of getting talent. I raise my hand, I'm going to start a business, I will have a lot of people that want to participate, right? The question is, can I get the right talent? And for that, I have to compete with Twitter, WordPress, Google, Facebook, every great company, because I want the A+ engineers, I want the A+ people, and I'm able to get them because I make them believe, right? I share with them why it's important to me, and why it's an important product, why it's an important vision, and what it's going to look like. It's no different. Think about what Steve Jobs and had to do with Apple. A kit, not even a prefabricated item. You have something that somebody has to assemble. You have to put it together, right? So that's pretty hard, right? Because even I know today or even then that that's not going to scale. That's not going to be an interesting company. But I bet you they didn't talk about the kit. But I bet you they talked about the vision of it. I think they talked about what this is going to be like when it's all already put together. What an amazing thing this is going to be when it's all put together. You know, I have a company that I invested in called MakerBot. Does anybody know MakerBot? It's one of the coolest companies in tech. It's an amazing... it's the same thing, where they had to assemble the items, and now they're pre-assembled, and that founder has gotten great talent because he can sell the future. He can explain the future. So I think that's really the hardest thing to go after.
Thanks. I think we might have time for the last question.
Yeah, what I find really beautiful with your product is that you stick to one very specific use case, just showing a one-page description of yourself to the world. How did you manage as an entrepreneur to say no to people who are telling you every day, okay, this feature would be great, this would be awesome, do that, do this? How did you manage to stick to this very simple but very efficient use case?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So the first question is, the first thing I'll tell you is when I was starting About.me, I went to a lot of my friends that I showed you up there. And I went to my partners at True Ventures. Because if my partners don't want to do it, I really can't do it, right? And I explained to them what I was going to do, and guess what? They all hated it. They said it was the horrible idea. And in fact, Tony Schneider, I'll say it, Tony Schneider, who was my co-founder in Sphere, is the CEO of Wordpress and my partner at True Ventures, and I backed him at Oddpost. He said, dude, don't do this. This is a train wreck. It's a really bad thing for your career. Please don't do this. I was like, I'm going to do it, right? Because I had an instinctive sense that it mattered, right? I understand the void that we're trying to fill. There's 400 million people out there that can have a LinkedIn profile and they look like a hero. There's 7 billion people on the planet. My wife does not look like a hero on LinkedIn. My wife looks like a hero on About.me, right? So there's a lot of people out there that I think we're serving and we think it's super important. On the product, you do have a lot of people and a lot of agendas, people wanting you to take your product in different directions. And I think you have to be very careful not to, if you're on the right value proposition, which we are, I think you have to hold steady for a very long time. But the other risk in not evolving your product, especially a product like this, is that it becomes stale, right? So we're now at I think a phase where we're ready to start doing some of the next generation ideas that we want to do on the product. And I think, but you have to be patient, but you also have to listen to your market, and you also have to be a good student of history to know that things do need to evolve. Look at how Facebook has evolved. Facebook started off as just a profile. Find your profile on Facebook. You know what I mean? Like, my profile's not on Facebook. There's a couple of words, there's a picture of me, but it evolved into something very different over time. But the core value proposition of being your profile still holds true for them today. It's still very important for them, but they've evolved. All right. Listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. It's honored.